The morning meeting, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Busy day. Sean Spicer, Tim Hogan, and I are going to try to lead you through the day and take your questions. If you want to ask a question, please raise your electronic hand, and we're going to get to it. The president is in Washington to start the day. He and the vice president get briefed at 11 a.m. Eastern time about the latest information on the shooting incident involving President Trump. He then does his Lester Holt interview. No idea when NBC will start to put that out. It airs in full on prime time. I'm sure there'll be clips on nightly. We'll see if they put anything out sooner than that. The White House briefing is at 2:30 Eastern time. The Homeland Security Secretary is going to join that. The vice president has no public events on her schedule. She does plan to join the briefing at 11 o'clock, the private briefing that the president and the vice president are having on the shooting. And Donald Trump is here in Milwaukee. He's not appeared in public yet. He's done a lot of print interviews. And the big news we're going to start with is the veepstakes. One senior Trump source told me this morning by text that the announcement is today, this morning. And my anticipation, based on what I've heard, is that there's a good chance we'll see President Trump and his running mate at the convention hall. So we're going to start there, guys. I had been led to believe strongly that it was going to be J.D. Vance, and I've said that publicly for the last few days. I'm not so sure now. One of the things I've heard is a lot of negativity about him. And I'm now open to anything, Vance or someone else. I think it could be Nikki Haley. And I totally ruled that out before. A million people have asked me, could it be Nikki Haley? I said no. But if it's not Vance, I don't know who it is. And if it's not Vance, I do think it's a good chance it's a surprise, not Rubio, not Burgum, because if it's not Vance, it's been a disinformation campaign to throw people off the scent. So, Sean, you first. What do you hear about veepstakes?
Well, first, I think you would have a riot, an absolute riot. I think Trump supporters are willing to deal with a lot, especially after last night, or excuse me, Saturday night, with respect to the VP. But Nikki Haley, to me, is just a non-starter with so many in the base. So I don't disagree. I've been saying for a long time, I agree there could be a dark horse. My dark horse has always been Lee Zeldin. I've got a bunch of reasons why I think it could be. But I agree with you. There's something apprentice style that is up. I don't know. Everything to your point points to Vance, but at the end of the day, I think that Trump instinctively wants to go to the surprise them aspect.
Yeah. The other big surprise could be Youngkin, it'd be a surprise. I think Haley. I previously thought impossible for the reason you said, but the fact that she's coming to the convention and speaking, and the shooting makes this more likely. I think anybody who comes on that stage and praises Donald Trump will get cheers. And so I think it's doable. Tim, you and I talked a little bit earlier. If it's Vance, what would Democrats feel? And if it's Haley, what would Democrats feel?
Well, I think if he picks J.D. Vance, and I think that is where everyone's head is at, or where everyone thought that this was going before Friday, is that he's a bomb thrower, right? He is someone who's incendiary. He is someone who, in light of what happened, tried to say that this was a result, the assassination attempt was a direct result of Democratic rhetoric. So it'll be interesting to see how that is balanced with the calls, I think, from both President Biden, President Trump, and others to cool down the rhetoric. And look, this is someone who at some point in his career also referred to Donald Trump as America's Hitler. I mean, that is factual. That is on the record. So he is also someone who's
no one cared. No one ever cares, Tim, what the Veep said about the top of the ticket.
I think at this moment
it moves on after day. Would Democrats be afraid if it's Haley?
I think if it is Haley, it'll be surprising. I think that is the one thing that Trump would have going for him if he picks somebody else. And I think he might be inclined to do it. Now, to Sean's point, it might rile up the base. They might revolt over that.
Hold on. After what happened Saturday night, the Trump base accepting Nikki Haley, I mean, the reality on either side of the VP assuming a presidential role, and I know 99% of the electorate doesn't think this, but the base on both sides does. There's no way that the base would say we're willing to accept Haley as the heir to the MAGA throne. It's not going to happen.
All right, fine.
Hold on, real quick. I think the actions in the last 7 days of Youngkin, in terms of the support that he has aired publicly for Trump, the Chesapeake rally, there is something tantalizing about what's going on, and he has said more in the last 7 days than he has in the last 7 months.
Yep. Youngkin would not scare Democrats as much as Haley would, but it would still potentially change the race. I will say again, it could come at any time. I think more likely than not, Trump and his running mate appear in the convention hall tonight. Be interesting to see if Trump tries to put makeup on his wounds or wears a bandage. Stand by for that. All right, let's move on to because we spent longer on that than I thought we would. Let's move on to Biden, and we'll come back to Trump in a Q&A. Tim, he's doing this interview today. For the foreseeable future, I don't think he can call Donald in public. I don't think he can call Donald Trump a fascist who would ruin democracy. So if you're the White House comm staff, what's the best soundbite? What's the best message today that can come out of the Lester Holt interview for them?
I mean, honestly, I think what could come out of it is no news, and that might be good news. Is that you are giving
No,
that
come
echoes
on.
that
No
echoes what
news? That's the
yeah,
best
no, that
news? No
that
news?
echoes what he said in his Oval Office address. I think it is a continuation of that message that you are continuing to call for lowering the temperature. And he's also, I mean, Lester Holt is going to pivot back to the movement to try to replace Biden on the ticket. And I think that movement is done. I think that movement, we have seen nothing over the last 3 to 4 days. And he is at the top of the ticket. He's the nominee. I think they'll have that conversation, but I think the headline they're looking for is more political and beneficial to them, that movement's dead.
Tim, you think no news is better than saying, hey, we need to not engage in violence. We need to lower the rhetoric, but Donald Trump would ruin the economy.
That is the message he needs to hammer from the Oval Office address. It's a continuation. That is
nothing on
the damn
issue.
break.
Nothing on issue. If you were the White House comms director or the campaign manager, you wouldn't want the message to be contrast on issues.
It still will be contrast on issues, but I think the headline is going to be a continuation for the calm.
That's the key.
Sean, what do you think about that?
Tim's right on this, that there's a difference between what he's going to say and what's news. It's not news that he's making a contrast. It's not news that he's echoing what he said last night. If you're the White House, you want to get out of tonight and fight to live tomorrow. They set this interview up to stem the tide. The tide is stemmed. Stop. Right now, you want to basically say, hey, Lester, our schedule shifted. We have a minute and a half of this interview and get out.
You guys don't think he should drive any message? He should try to avoid making news? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm not saying that he won't try to. I'm not saying that there won't be.
So what should he try?
Realistic.
If you could write a soundbite and guarantee Lester would lead with it, what would it be?
If we could,
Joe Biden says what?
To Kamala Harris, if we could be unburdened by the context, then I would say that he should push a message that he wants as a core message on the economy. But that's just not going to happen. It's just.
What would the sound? But Tim, write the soundbite, and
Yeah.
Lester says, Tim, whatever Joe Biden says that you tag will lead.
I mean, look,
write the soundbite.
Then I will pluck something from polling that's very simple about how Joe Biden's going to fight for the middle class and Republicans are still going to push for trickle-down economics and help the wealthy and well-connected. But my point is that doesn't fit right now. It just doesn't fit. There's no natural anchor. It's difficult. We know what the headline is going to be. It's going to be a call for calm, and it's going to be that the movement to replace him has ended.
All right. That's not great for him as far as I'm concerned. All right. Hands up, please. If you want to ask a question, raise your electronic hand. Make a comment, ask a question, whichever. We'd love to hear from folks. I see hands starting to go up, which is great. And feel free to unmute, please, when I click on your instruction and go right to it. Charles, unmute, please, and go ahead.
You have me with you. Sorry, Mark. I don't to turn on the camera, but the whole back and forth between Nikki Haley being invited, disinvited, there's something going on there. Maybe that's his play of either the veepstakes or civility. He's extending an olive branch saying,
well, she was invited before the shooting. It was already in motion. So
but
I don't know.
Now with her being on the speakers list, that's just an elevated form of the invitation. I'm guessing. I don't know when that development came.
No, I think that was set in motion. Charles, who do you think he'll pick? Who should he pick?
He should pick Nikki Haley because, frankly, I don't see an advantage between the other people in the veepstakes. I mean,
yeah. And who will he pick?
I think he's going to go forth with Haley. Haley at least brings in an advantage.
Okay, Charles, thank you. Brett, unmute, please.
Hey, Mark, thanks. I think he's going to pick a Democrat because it's going to show that he is crossing the aisle there. So I don't know who. But I think Trump's got the entire right locked up, and he's going in for all of Biden's people. So I think Biden is losing a lot of disenfranchised Democrats, and he's going to go in and clean them up.
Sean, I know you think that's wrong.
Well, for a variety of reasons. One, I think there, as much as the Trump campaign isn't always historical traditionally, they still have to vet this person. The idea that there's a Democrat that's close enough outside of say like that has a relationship, and more than anything, Trump values the relationship. Call it loyalty, call you what you want, but he has to have chemistry in a relationship with someone. There's no one that fits that mold right now. Look, you've seen the Mike Pence movie. You know what he's looking for. I just don't think that, like, I get what a lot of politicos think, and I get why. It's not that I dismiss it. If you understand who he is at his core, it's not, he does not want to sit around and have discussions with Nikki Haley every day. I was there, I watched her leave when she was UN ambassador. She didn't want to stay in the cabinet. Do you really think that he wants to have that relationship? He doesn't forget things like that.
All right. Yes, Youngkin. I've now decided it's Youngkin. Mayhel Fowler, unmute, please. Thank you for your question, Brett.
Yeah.
Mayhel Fowler.
Hey, yes. Like a lot of people here, I always thought he was going to pick JD Vance. Maybe Nikki Haley. First of all, because I've given money to both Democrats and Republicans, my text threads, my 3 email boxes, of course, inundated with calls for money from all sides. And the last 2 days, crickets from the Democrats. And now getting messages from Trump, unity and peace, unity and peace. So maybe he'll pick Nikki Haley. I think she's the stronger choice. He'll definitely bring in more suburban women if he does. Youngkin might provide Virginia for sure in his inbox, but I still think it's going to be JD Vance.
Okay. If it is JD Vance, again, I tell you, all I've heard from Republicans here on the ground is that will be an unpopular choice with a lot of Republicans. And that was before his tweet on Saturday, which a lot of people here did not like. Paul, unmute, please.
There we go. I'm so sorry. I have a question for Sean. It's not going to be a Democrat. Lieberman couldn't run with McCain for the same reason. But this morning's press has a lot of Trump moderating. Trump has an opportunity, pulling back from the brink. And I thought for a long time that he had that shot the first time in 2016 and blew it. He has that shot again now. He can bring the country together, certainly more than he has, and really isolate people like me who really don't like him. Will he do it?
Thank you, Paul. Sean, what do you think?
So look, if you look back to the 2016 campaign, I think for the last, call it 3 weeks, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, he was pitch perfect going into that final stretch when people wanted to make sure, and he didn't get as hyperbolic, et cetera, didn't get as personal on some of the attacks. I just question whether he can hold it for shy of 4 months, right? So I get it. I think this week we're going to see it. Look, he is at his core a showman. He understands the imagery. Saturday night wasn't a mistake. I will say this real quick. When you read the Time magazine profile on Laura Trump, there's an anecdote in there that I couldn't help but think about on Saturday night. Laura Trump, right before her wedding to Eric at Mar-a-Lago, falls off a horse, breaks both wrists, and she refuses to put casts on her arms because she doesn't want to be photographed like that. And Trump's comment is, she's a strong cookie, right? I've heard him use that. I mean, that's how he thinks. That imagery Saturday night was in his core. It's his id. He wants to be strong and tough and project strength. I just don't know how long he can be the unity guy. I think you're right on your analysis. I just don't know how long.
Right.
Thanks,
All right. There are two topics I want to cover. Tim, start on this one, and then Sean. Tim, just talk a little bit more about where you think the dump Biden movement stands. Is it dead? Politico has a story about how Nancy Pelosi is still on top of it, and she's been the key for a while. Is it dead? Is it dormant?
I think it's dead. I mean, it has been dormant over the last few days, but I'm not sure how we're going to find a moment where Sean's very excited. I'm not sure where we're going to find a moment where that reactivates. And we also have no time. And we were talking about how the clock was running out before what happened on Friday happened. And there's no time for us to be able to do this. In addition, I think we have not seen, and the story remains the same. It is a decision that Joe Biden is going to have to that he would have to make, and that he would have to be convinced of. And through this entire process, we have not seen any polling consistently that shows that he is so far behind, or it is such a durable loss from the debate that he's no longer going to be able to recover. And so I just don't think the materials are there, and I think the momentum is gone.
Sean, dead, alive, dormant, what?
I am so bipartisan and focused on unity right now. I want him in this race. We need him in. We should stand with our president today and make sure these calls from the left just end and we go forward.
All right. So another topic, Sean, you first on this one. There's tons of things about the circumstance of the shooting that make no sense to people. How could that guy have gotten on the top of the building? How could the president have actually been shot as opposed to being hit by glass, given the nature of the wound? Why did the service allow his head to come popping up when 101 is, until you're sure it's secure, you keep him surrounded and down? A bunch of other stuff. So, Sean, what are people on the right saying about the shooting at this point?
So I'll make this brief because I think we could do an entire show on this. Look, I think everyone on the right is focused on the questions that you just asked. How did this happen? Was it an inside job? Who knew what, when? How did these lapses happening? DEI training. I mean, you name it. Everyone on the right is focused on the failures of security. I spent yesterday talking to a lot of people in and out of the Secret Service, senior levels that I've known from my time back through Bush. And you get a wide variety of who's responsible. I will say you're going to see a lot of finger pointing a la Washington, pointing a lot of it at local law enforcement and what was technically their responsibility. Again, we could go down a million rabbit holes and figure out where this goes. There's probably a whole multi-part series that we could discuss. But the right, make no mistake about it, everybody on the right, right-leaning media, commentators, influencers, is crystal focused on where those failures occur and why they occurred. And I think the question is, does the VP announcement overshadow this going forward, or do these things keep going? But make no mistake that's going to be a big issue for folks on the right for the next several days, probably.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing a bunch of committees start. There's a question about whether or not there should be an independent commission on this, or whether the Oversight Committee should take the lead, Homeland Security Committee should take the lead. There are so many unanswered questions, and I think we're going to have to accept that there are going to be a bunch of bad answers to these questions because they have not been communicating thus far, and that shows that they either don't have their ducks in a row or those answers are going to be highly problematic. Just very quickly on the DEI thing too, that is the first thing that I saw the right wing talking about when this was happening online, and I, Chip Roy was also tweeting about it. Why are there women Secret Service who are not tall enough to protect him? Why can this woman not holster his gun? I mean, that's dangerous, and I think it is incumbent upon the right, as this investigation happens, to not get over their skis on this, on the DEIification of the Secret Service as their concern.
Two things.
Tim, thank you, Mike. Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Go.
There's I think from a PR standpoint, the way that the Secret Service has handled this is horrible. I mean, I don't know if they're
disastrous.
Security or higher not to talk, but going out and do a press conference yesterday in Milwaukee and not address this, I was shocked. The second thing is, I get Tim's point on the DEI aspect of this, but again, in talking to Secret Service high level, special agents in charge, et cetera, on down yesterday, whether or not you want to call it a DEI issue, there is a training problem that you cannot holster your gun properly. There is a physical fitness issue that we're seeing, and a standards issue that is, again, you don't have to, you can call it non-DEI, DEI, whatever. There is no question that there is a standards issue within law enforcement right now. And to the extent that it's, so I'll just leave it at that.
I'll say again, there's no way they should have let his head come up for 7 seconds like that. No way. Michael Graham.
So one thing about the big picture of the Secret Service, I will offer as a small business owner, we all know how hard it is to find quality people. As a customer, from plumbers to coffee, how hard it is to get decent quality. America is suffering a competency crisis, I think, across the board. And there's no reason to think that's not going to go into law enforcement. But my question for the three of you, the New Hampshire Democratic Party and the Biden campaign in New Hampshire had a planned presser for today. And the headline was literally, "We meet to slam Trump's plans to be a dictator." And obviously poor timing. Interestingly, they quietly canceled it. They did. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You said it's the Democratic Party in New Hampshire. That was right.
It was two. It was the Biden campaign in New Hampshire,
Okay.
Biden for New Hampshire, and then the chairman of the party, Ray Buckley, was going to be there, and they quietly canceled it. And what I'm hearing is that there are Democrats, the hardcore partisans, the MAGA version of Democrats. They don't want to hear any backing down. They want to hear Trump is still a dictator. We all know he's a dictator. Obviously they're not going to say too bad he missed, but they're not ready to back down at all. And so my question with three of you is, what is the smarter plan if you assume, and I admit this assumption, that this race is pretty much over unless something big happens? So Democrats now want to lose within the parameters, kind of Bob Dole 96. Is it smarter to keep fighting and keep at least what you got? Or does Biden think that running on policy, which we all know polls not well for him? I mean, once again, separate from how you feel about the policies, Trump wins on the issues in the polls. Is that what's the smart way to lose well?
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would take issue with whether or not it's a loss, right? Like we'll see where we are right now and whether the current environment is durable. But before, we were still in a margin of error race in the blue wall, and I think that's the ball game. So I think there is still a fighting chance there in terms of rhetoric and how that changes. Yeah, I think the call to cool the rhetoric on both sides is serious, and that temperature will be taken down. I think the needle to thread for Democrats is I don't think that you can back away from claims that we don't think he would be a good president in a second term. I think that is a question that we're wedded to, and the making clear that the rhetoric that we've used, none of it is a call to action for violence, right? Like it is a anathema to democracy to have a call to action for violence. And I don't want to get into like both sides, but you saw the Wall Street Journal editorial board yesterday do a very good call and point out some congressional Republicans who also need to back off and calm down. And I think that we are in that timeline right now, and that's where we are.
Sean, what do you think?
I would just say this: you have on both sides, you've got a lot of folks on the right that are like do not want to yield President Trump's call for unification, that are saying their side started it, they brought the temperature up, and on the left you've got exactly the point that you just made, right? So you've got the extremes of both sides that are saying we're not dropping our arms, we're going to keep fighting, we're going to keep going forward, no pun intended here. I think the question is how many in the middle, and this gets to the bottom line. The race, as we all know, is going to come down to a handful of voters in a handful of states. And what these campaigns are now doing is saying, hey, each of our bases are with us. We're not going to lose anything. And so how do we figure out how we're getting that extra 500, that extra 1,000, that extra 1,500 votes in a Pennsylvania and a Michigan? So we've shifted real quick to a general election strategy, which is how are we playing on those margins? That's it.
Yep. Jordan, real quick. Go ahead, Jordan. Quick question, please.
Yeah, I take more of the Frank Lund's view on this, which is this comes down to voter turnout at this point. I think people are still quite entrenched in their beliefs. I'm curious where you guys think voter turnout goes on this, and if President Biden, and for Tim, what can President Biden say to re-energize his base?
Every 4 years, people want to claim it's about turnout or it's about persuasion. It's always about both. It's always about both. So I think it's going to be a low turnout election, or at least I did before. I think the biggest single factor from the shooting is MAGA was already super energized. They're now going to be whatever beyond super energized is. Tim.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it is also a question of recovery from the debate, and the Biden campaign knows that it has work to do there. But the folks who were soft for Biden, who went from undecided, who might stay home, we didn't see a lot of movement to third-party candidates, which is good. We didn't see Trump's ceiling increase with a lot of the polling. So I think it is about getting people re-energized to go vote for Biden. It's not necessarily winning them back over from Trump. It's convincing them to get off the couch and go vote.
So this is the NBC. This is the NBC poll from this weekend. Satisfied with Biden, the nominee, among Democrats, 33%. Satisfied that Trump's the nominee, among Republicans, 71%. So it's not just turnout, it's enthusiasm, it's excitement. And I think the Biden campaign, that's a 40-point delta. That's a big, big problem. It is about turnout, but you got to turn out people that are excited.
So if Biden's going to win the election, he's going to win with people being less excited about him, as you just said. He's going to win with people thinking he's done a horrible job on inflation and immigration. He's going to win with people thinking he's too old to do the job. And yet, he's in it right now in some of the polls. I'll say again, the internal polls, including of the Democrats, are much worse than the public polls. Still trying to unpack why that is. We can talk about that in a future episode. But when Tim and others say his path is winning exactly 270 electoral votes, that's his path. No one's ever won with a single path that's narrow. Very grateful you all joined. We'll be back here tomorrow. Tell your friends and enemies to come join us on the morning meeting every morning, 8:30 Eastern time. The president was getting a briefing at 11, doing the Lester Holt interview, flying to Vegas, White House briefing at 2:30. Donald Trump here in Milwaukee. We think we'll get a vice presidential announcement. Maybe, as one source says, during the day. And again, I predict he'll walk onto that stage or maybe appear by video, but probably walk into the hall.
I will say this, just as a prediction. You will see Donald Trump today. You will see him on that stage in Milwaukee. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah, and I think there's a good chance he'll appear there with his running mate. And even though Democrats prefer Haley than Sean saying Republicans don't like Haley as much as Democrats, if he did it, it would be a masterstroke politically. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And again, particularly after Saturday night, I think Donald Trump could name Hillary Clinton as running mate, and she'd be warmly received in the hall. Thank you for joining. We'll see you again right here. Same bad time, same bad channel, morning meeting. Sean, Tim, thank you guys. Have a great day.